Alrighty, welcome everybody. It's units 3 and 4, health and human development, your first key knowledge, your first area of study, your first unit 3 topic that you're going to be looking at in health and human development. Hopefully you've all had some ripping summer holidays, you all got some sunshine, hopefully you all went to the beach, got to enjoy it all, but now the batteries are hopefully well and truly recharged and you're ready to go for what's going to be a great year. Lots of content to cover. And as you can see, these dudes at the front here at the start of this PowerPoint, they are just as excited as you are and is just as excited as me. So today, what we're going to be looking at, we have created these PowerPoints, and what's embedded in these PowerPoints is the content that we're going to be covering and also activities that will facilitate discussion and hopefully get you thinking about the ways in which we interpret this particular key knowledge. So it's really important that you watch this video, that you do the activities, and you come prepared to class, ready to go, and sharing with all your other classmates. And this way, it will be able to facilitate the classes a lot better. We'll be able to go in depth with all the activities, and the class as a whole will just run super smooth, and everyone will be super engaged. So without further ado, the key knowledge that we're looking at today it's the intro to health, basically, what you guys should already be aware of. And that is the concepts of health and well-being, including physical, social, emotional, and mental dimensions and illness, and the dynamic nature and subjective nature of these concepts. So hopefully after today, we're all going to be able to wrap our heads around what this is actually sort of suggesting to us. And with that, it's going to be a lot easier to comprehend. So before we go any further, Homer's thinking over there to your right. He's just as curious as I am for what you guys are about to write for this, but I want you to just pause the video after this and write a paragraph on what you think it means to be healthy. And have you always felt that this to be the case? Have you always thought that what you're writing in this paragraph is something that you thought of maybe 2, 3, even 5 years ago? And I want you to describe, why is that? Well, why is that you think your definition might have changed? Or has it changed? It might not have changed at all. So pause the video and give it a crack. I know it's hard to actually pinpoint what health is. Health is very deep, and over all the concepts that you're going to be covering, hopefully a lot of the concepts you've covered in units 1 and 2, you've able to come to one conclusion. Health is complex. It is large, it is worldly, it relates to you at the local level, it relates to your community, it relates to the whole entire world. And we as individuals, it varies from one person to the other. And it's going to stay like that. Various factors that we're going to find out later on in the PowerPoint, they all play a role in what we think health is. So it's hard to actually provide a clean-cut definition of what health is because we all view it differently. We all see it in a different light. And in a way, it makes the concept of health quite grand, but it's hard to pinpoint specifics. So that's why it's important that we look at the dimensions, the nature, and all these sort of attributes of health for us to get a better understanding of it. So a few definitions that you might find crikey, that you might find helpful writing down in your books. These come from large organisations such as the World Health Organization, one straight from your textbook and another from the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare. So 4 of these definitions, they're the basic definition of what we perceive health and well-being to be. So health, the World Health Organization writes as a state of complete physical, social, and mental well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Well-being writes as a complex combination of all dimensions of health, characterized by an equilibrium in which the individual feels happy, healthy, capable, and engaged. Illness writes as the state of feeling unwell, although the term is also often used synonymously. I'll give you 2 points if you can pronounce that correctly, with disease. And health status writes as an individual's or a population's overall health, taking into account various aspects such as life expectancy, amount of disability, and levels of disease risk factors. So health is it's influenced in many ways, and I'm sure you've already been able to discover that. It can vary from family, it can vary to religion, it can vary to your own body, physical, mental. So what I want you to do right now, before we go any further, before we talk about any further influences and what they actually mean, I want you to think of 5 factors. And these 5 factors, I want you to note these 5 factors and how they influence your health and well-being the most. And why is that? Why do these 5 factors influence your health the most? And when you're writing these down, I want you to think of these 2 questions that I've written there. Are these a result of personal beliefs or opinions, or are these a result of powers beyond your control? So take the time, pause the video, think of 5 factors that influence your health and well-being the most, and discuss why this is the case. Alrighty. The baby over there, that baby is moving. Something that also is moving or changing is dynamic. Dynamic is a concept of health, which is suggesting right here, as I've highlighted particularly, it's the changing or moving continually. So health and well-being is constantly changing. We grow and it fluctuates, and this is a result of many different things. So some changes can be rapid, some changes might be slow. So something that's rapid could be something, an illness that you get diagnosed with, as it writes there, something like cancer. This can then impact immediately on someone's mental and emotional health, which then might fold out onto other dimensions of health. But other particular slow changes that you might look at is something like developing bad eating habits that will eventually impose effects on their physical, mental, and emotional health, because if they're slowly developing poor eating habits, it's going to impinge on their ability to exercise, which will then impact on their mental health if they're not physically fit, which then highlights this domino effect of health. So health it's responsive to our environments and it's responsive to our experience. So the environment in which we grow up in, the environment in which we surround ourselves with, and what we experience through life is what influences this dynamic nature of health. So another important concept of this part of this concept is how health and well-being is adaptive to the influences within the body and the environment that they surround themselves in. So changes happen, but health and well-being adapt to that. It might be in a negative way or positive way, but we as humans adapt ourselves to the best way possible, or whatever way we seem most fit. Which highlights the need for a combination of not just maybe mental strength or physical strength, but it's all 5 dimensions, which is physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual. Combination of those, and you're on your way to achieve some pretty good health, I reckon. Subjective nature as well. So we had dynamic, which is talking about how it's constantly changing. Subjective nature is talking about when, in particular for health, when our health and well-being is influenced by our personal beliefs or opinions. So when something's subjective, it's as a result of how we see the world, how we view the world, what we believe, and this could be from other influences. So in terms of health and well-being, if you take, for example, the Simpsons family, they might definitely perceive health a lot differently to the way I perceive health. I mean, Homer, he works 9 to 5, sitting down on his bum, gets home, sits down on his bum again, and drinks a lot of beer. I mean, you could suggest if he's going to Moe's Taverns every night, he might have some form of social health, but in terms of his overall well-being, it's hard to know if it's achieving good overall health. So that's just, it goes to show that how we perceive health and our own personal interpretation of what health is can influence it. Another thing here, we have this Muslim praying, which highlights some good spiritual health, which coincides with the influence of family and friends on their beliefs of health and well-being, as well as the subjective nature of health and well-being. Things like how much they value it and their past level of health and well-being is again going to contribute to the subjective nature of health and the way in which they see it based upon their own past experiences and their current circumstances. So we just talked about dynamic and subjective nature and the dynamic and subjective nature of health. Before we did, you noted 5 factors that influence your health and well-being the most. I want you to go back and revisit that page. I want you to look at those 5 factors. And I want you to highlight and color code the influences that are dynamic and the influences that are subjective. And I want you to note, what do you have more of? Do you have more dynamic shifts, which could be illness, which could be eating, a diet, or subjective, so something like your family or your friends, the influence on your health. And I want you to describe, what do you have more of? And why do you think this is the case? Why, if you do have more subjective factors that influence your health and well-being, why do you think this is the case? Same goes for dynamic. So I want you to come up with a brief explanation as to why you think that is the case, and just elaborate on why you think it is. Pause the video now and give that one a crack. So the next part of the key knowledge is the dimensions of health and well-being. So these 5 dimensions have been decided that if you were to incorporate a balance of all 5 of these dimensions, you're going to achieve overall good health. So we're all going to go into detail onto what all of these actually mean. But what they are is physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual. First up is physical. So physical is actually looking at how our body and its systems can perform tasks and how physically fit we are. So it's just looking at the body as a whole. So some of the factors that feature as a part of physical health and well-being is flexibility, strength, healthy blood pressure, healthy weight, healthy height, and being physically fit. And that's even performing physical tasks effectively, because, I mean, if you look at elderly, there's a lot of elderly people out there that are physically fit, not as strong, suggest as a 20-year-old, but they're still physically fit in their own right. The question I'd like you to think, you don't have to write anything for this, but I'd like you to think of this one. Why do you think that the physical level of health and well-being of an individual first arises for most people when they hear the terms health and well-being? So when you think of someone being healthy, most of the time, if someone sees someone going for a long run or they're super fit with footy, someone's going to go, oh, they're so healthy. But why is this the case? How do we know? How do we know that they're super healthy? We just talked about before that to achieve overall good health and well-being, you need a balance of all 5 dimensions. So just have a think about that one. Mental health. Mental health, the second dimension, it's a tricky one because there's actually no clean-cut definition of what mental health is worldwide. There's no conclusive. There are varying different definitions, but because of the complex nature to mental health, there actually is no conclusive definition worldwide due to these cultural differences. But mental health, it refers to the mind and the brain, and it relates to our ability to process information, to form opinions, and to make decisions, and how stable we are mentally. Some of the things that contribute to a higher level of mental health is confidence or self-belief, coping with day-to-day demands, using coping mechanisms for stress, and using positive decision-making capabilities. Flanders over here, you can see he's awfully stressed. I'm not sure why. But what I want you to do, I want you to write, think of some things that happen in your life. We come across stress on a daily basis. So I want you to write down some mechanisms you've put in place in your day-to-day lives to cope with stress. And I want you to describe how this has an impact on your mental health. So for me, if I'm stressed out, I will either go for a run. I find that going for a run, it really clears my head. It's just me in that fluid motion. As well as I like to go for a surf. I find that when I'm out in the surf, I am calm. I am myself, and there's nothing to worry about. It's just me in the moment of surfing and the moment with the ocean. And I find that really helps me cope with any form of stress. So I want you to think of some things like this. What are some mechanisms? Think of 3 mechanisms. It could be anything. It could be absolutely anything. And I want you to describe how this has an impact on your mental health. So just quickly take the time to do that, and we'll be ready to share them in class. Social health. Social health is, it's quite obvious what it is. It's our ability to develop relationships and have meaningful experiences with others that allows us to manage situations to the best of our ability, all in various nature. So, you can manage conflict, you can be respectful of others and communicate effectively with others, which then contributes to social. So positive social health is hanging out with your friends, going out and partaking in the community, being an effective family member, hanging out with mum and dad, doing the dishes for them, and things like that. Some other things, though, when you look at social health now, we are so interconnected 24/7, and that's a result of social media. And whether this is affecting our social health or overall health in a positive or negative way, it's hard to decide. I know personally, and I find I'm on my phone way too much. So I don't want to be on my phone that much, but for some reason I am. So I like to take the time out just to refresh, recharge, get back to what it actually means to be a human, which is getting away from the screen. Which leads me then to this next slide. This next slide is a video. And I watched this video. I actually got showed this video last year, and I found it really hit home. It's looking at how we can miss opportunities in life if we've constantly got our heads down. If we're looking down at our phones on maps rather than asking a stranger in the street for a direction or anything like that. So I want you to watch this video, and I want you to think, do you think that social networking is impacting positively or negatively on the lives of individuals? And in doing so in your answer, I want you to relate this back to the dimensions of health and well-being. So I want you to explain. We've only talked about mental, social, and physical. You know there's emotional and spiritual. I want you to think. Watch the video because it's incredibly moving. I saw it, and I've shown so many people since. And now, exciting times because I get to show you guys. So pause the video here and write down what you think. Alrighty. Hopefully you enjoyed that video. Next up is emotional health. And emotional health is basically referring to how we manage our emotions and how we manage our feelings in a healthy way. So it's not only just for ourselves, but it's also for others. And it highlights our ability as an individual to openly and freely express our emotions and therefore help us manage our choices in our lives to the best of our ability. So then we lead a healthy life through informed decisions based upon our own emotional health. So in terms of what actually emotional health is, you can see some similarities between mental and emotional health, but emotional really is looking at the way in which we control our feelings, positive self-imagery, expressing our feelings openly, and being resilient. So Squidward there doesn't look too happy, but maybe SpongeBob is impeding a bit of his own emotional health, his own positive self-imagery that gives Squidward the life, the insight as to what it is to be emotionally healthy, emotionally stable. Right. The final one is spiritual health. So spiritual health it's very open to interpretation, I find, because it is not material, it's not tangible, it's not within the human, it's a phenomenon basically. And we as humans, we're very smart intellects. Despite being one above the chimp, we actually are very smart. And what we've been able to do based upon this is we've been able to create these existential beliefs that aren't essentially real, or we can't see it, but it allows individuals to believe and shape their values, shape their ethics, and it's developed a conscience in their lifetime. And as a result of this, it's given them meaning in life, and it's given them belief and faith in systems that are a higher power to them. So by doing so, it allows for a lot of reflection and consideration, and by turning to a higher power, it creates a devotion and something for their lives to fulfill. And so there's many different religions out there, but it doesn't necessarily have to be religion. You look at the Indigenous Australians who do a lot of Dreamtime stories, who do a lot of Dreamtime stories, and also you can look at things like meditation and yoga, and just overall spiritual health. So the end goal is to find a sense of happiness and fulfillment, and seek peace and harmony, and having a sense of belonging. So I mean, there is something like 1 billion Catholic people in the world, and whilst not every Catholic person knows each other, it's a known fact, but what they can do is, if they do meet, they have something in common immediately. And this spiritual belief, it gives them this sense of belonging, so they can meet anyone in the world, and before they've actually introduced themselves and shared their name or even their interests, they've got something in common. So this social intelligence by the humans, this cognitive just strength that has allowed the humans to become so intelligent and top of the food chain, has then created this new bracket of spiritual health. And it dates back for years and years and years, and it is still present in majority of the world. The final... Ooh. Sorry, I lost my microphone there. No good. The final concept of this key knowledge that we're looking at is interrelationships between the dimensions of health and well-being. So we just talked about the dimensions, and we've already previously noted that to achieve overall good health, you need a balance. You can't just have one. You can't just be physically fit and expect to be healthy and have a positive well-being, because you need to have overall general health and well-being. You don't have to be extreme in one or the other. You can have a good balance, and you're achieving optimal health and well-being. So as a result, these interrelationships between the dimensions, it shows that each dimension influences the other. And for an individual to achieve optimal health, it's about taking care of their physical self, using their mind constantly and constructively, and openly expressing their emotions with the people around them. So I guess an example of this that we can look at, and we talked about it before, is if someone was to be diagnosed with a chronic illness such as cancer. What this will do straight away, it's going to impact their mental and emotional health. So they might be, they're going to be really upset. Their family will be affected. Their emotions, their ability to stay positive is going to be impeded on as a result of being diagnosed with cancer. So if there's not much social support there, they might feel restricted. They might feel less likely to maybe socialize with their friends. And as a result of their physical condition from the illness, they might not be physically fit enough to exercise, or they might even have a lack of motivation through this diagnosis as a result of their mental and emotional health taking a toll, which will impede on their ability to exercise as well if they're not motivated. So I guess what's important to note here is that experiencing change in one of the dimensions will result in a change to some degree, but not necessarily the same degree. So it's not going to affect all of them the same, but it will affect to some degree by one or more of the other dimensions. This is a really important concept because it's looking at how if one thing's that happen, more than likely it's gonna create an effect. And what is that effect, you ask? The domino effect. If one gets knocked over or one gets picked up, it's likely to knock over or pick up another dimension. It just goes to show that there is complexity. There is no answer. And if you look at the way how you view health in that paragraph that you first read at the start of this lecture, then I'm sure already you've probably gone, well, hang on, I didn't even consider emotional health, or I didn't even consider spiritual health. So it's things like that, and they all interrelate and they all affect each other in one way or another. So hopefully after this lecture, it's given you some good content. A lot of it is based off the textbook in which you guys have been prescribed for this year, and with these activities, they're super important, they're super engaging, and it's very open to your own interpretation. And what this is going to do, you're going to come to class, the discussions are going to be on fire, and everybody's going to be super engaged. And as a result of that, we're all going to take away a lot more than what you could ever imagine possible. So hopefully come prepared with your questions, come prepared with the activities, and we're going to have a really engaging class the next time I see you. Thanks for your time, guys. You.